The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to another NASSP webinar. My name is John Nori and I'll be your moderator. Our topic today is leadership traits of principals who lead high-performing schools. As you participate in this webinar, we invite you to expand the conversation on Twitter, and we will talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but our hashtag is #NASSPwebinar. If you have technical problems today, you're going to need this phone number, toll-free 855-352-9002. Also, you'll need the webinar ID number at the bottom of the screen. That's 568-380-723. And I'll pause for a moment to give you an opportunity to write those down. As I said, we encourage you to participate in the webinar via Twitter, and our hashtag is NASSP. In this case, we'd like you to be specific with NASSP webinar. We're on Facebook at NASSP, facebook.com/principals. The website is there in red for you, www.nassp.org webinar. You can get a certificate of attendance at the end of this activity by going to that spot on the website and printing your certificate from there. Also, I want to mention, and I will give you this connection again, at the end of the activity today, these materials will appear on our website. The slides, the recording, everything that has to do with today's webinar will be available to you on the NASSP website within about 48 hours. If you have questions today, I want you to click on the question box and print your questions in there. I will collect those, and during the Q&A at the end of the presentation, invite the panelists to respond to those questions. And without further ado, I'd like to get into the content by introducing Josephine Franklin. Jo is the Associate Director at NASSP, and she'll talk a little bit more about her role. The other presenters are pictured there along with their contact information. And just quickly, Kathy O'Neill's a researcher, Sheila Harity is superintendent, Bill Truesdale a principal, and they come from different parts of the country, and their backgrounds are available to you on the website, and we'll say a few words about each as we go along. So Jo, without further ado, let me pass the torch to you. And I think I have Jo muted, so hold on one second, folks, while I get back to her. I do. I apologize for that. All right, Jo, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Hi, I'm Jo Franklin. I'm the NASSP Associate Director for Professional Development. Since 2007, NASSP has designated 69 secondary schools as breakthrough schools in 34 states. Each of these schools have significant numbers of students living in poverty, and each demonstrated 3 years of continuous improvement in student performance, including state assessments, graduation rates, and efforts to reduce achievement gaps. Some of the schools are urban, suburban, and others are rural, and each serves a very different student body, including large and diverse minority populations, including Hispanic, African American, and Native American Indian students. At first glance, these schools appear to have little in common beyond their significant numbers of high poverty students and well-documented improvements in student outcomes. However, the commonality in each of these schools is strong principal leadership. In each case, the dramatic gains in student performance were led by exceptional principals who were committed to the Breaking Ranks School Improvement Framework and had the leadership skills required to change the culture and move the schools forward. The Breaking Ranks Framework provides important insights into the high leverage strategies that transform these schools. The evolution of Breaking Ranks School Improvement Framework began in 1996 when NASSP published Breaking Ranks, Changing an American Institution, with recommendations to improve secondary schools by making them more student-centered and personalizing programs and support systems to meet the individual needs of each student. Over the years, NASSP expanded its focus specifically to high schools and middle schools. These publications were followed by 2 guidebooks to help school leaders drive change. There's the Field Guide and 10 Skills, and a culminating framework to drive change across the K-12 learning continuum. Next slide, please. The School Improvement Framework centered on 3 areas that have been the core of Breaking Ranks: collaborative leadership, personalizing the school environment, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We tend to think of the breakthrough schools as the poster child for breaking ranks, having a documented record of success in improving the outcomes and changing the lives of their students. However, the Breakthrough School program focuses on school-level strategies and outcomes. It's all about the schools. Next slide, please. In an effort to further enhance transformational change, NASSP has studied school leaders whose skills, dispositions, experiences, and passions made their changes a reality. I'm going to introduce Kathy O'Neill, an independent consultant and the researcher on this project, and she will explain the research study, Leadership Matters, What We Can Learn from High-Performing Principals, which is about the exceptional school leaders who led transformative efforts at these breakthrough schools. And I should also point out that the study is available on our website, and it can be downloaded following this presentation. Kathy?
Good afternoon. I'm really excited about this report and happy to share some of the research details with you. I've been involved in this business called education as far back, I think, as the earth was cooling. Started as a chemistry teacher, high school administrator, central office staff, superintendent, higher ed professor, and the last 20 years involved in this research of educational leadership. I must say in that time, this is one of the best studies I've helped conduct, and I use the word helped very carefully. I was a small part. The story is really the story of the 67 principals, 69, 2 of whom we were not able to contact, who did all of the work to develop these breakthrough schools. The work of Joan Octor and Joe Franklin helping us develop the survey and the focus group questions, and the amazing work of Mark Toner in helping to write this report. So it took a lot of people, I think, to make this come about. So why is this so important and should be important to all of you? As little as 20 years ago, there was very little empirical research to support that the principal had any impact whatsoever on student achievement. The last 2 decades have added so much to the body of research. And we now know, thanks to people like Leithwood and Seashore Lewis, that the that strong school leadership has a definite impact, positive on student achievement, negative if not a strong leader. We also know that good leaders attract good teachers. And that's what you want in a school where students achieve at high levels. But so much more is needed. Our goal for this study was to try to paint a picture of what strong school leadership looks like in practice. What do leaders do in schools where students achieve? I think this report will add to the collective information about how schools thrive with strong leadership and what strong leadership looks like in practice. The research began with a series of face-to-face and electronic sessions where we brainstormed what questions we should ask on surveys, and also in focus groups of both principals and teachers who were in breakthrough schools when the awards were given. The principals were divided into those who were still in their breakthrough schools and those that had moved on to other positions. So my task here is to explain the research process that we used for the surveys and the focus group to collect qualitative and quantitative data, qualitative and quantitative. Now sometimes the only people who are impressed with this are people working on a dissertation. But one of the things I'd like to point out with you, to you here is that this has great reliability, validity, both content and by item. The teacher survey contained 25 selected response items and one open-ended item. The selected response item was divided into subscales. Copies of all the surveys are located in the paper's appendix, so you can see all the questions and actually maybe take the survey yourself and see what you think. The overall reliability of the teacher survey was 0.972, which is very good. Content validity of the survey items were established from different sources of essential competencies for school leaders. So the report was divided into responses from teachers at schools where the principal remained and at schools where the principal left. And when we get to the findings, you'll see why this is so important, but it was important to us. Let's move on to the principal. The breakthrough schools principals were contacted at their last known email. We had a really good response rate, about 55%, and the survey had 20 items similar to what we had on the teacher survey. A good overall reliability of 0.68, a little lower than the teachers, but that's likely due to the smaller sample size. Content validity was very strong based upon the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards Leader Behaviors and NASSP's own leadership skills. We sent an initial invitation and we basically randomly selected 20 principals, 10 of whom had been in their position before and had moved on, and 10 of whom were still in the position. Let's move on to, and in order to also have diversity, we made sure that we had people that were in place from 2008 to 2014 so that we would be able to have a broad spectrum because this program went over a number of years. The focus group consisted actually of finding 19 participants randomly selected, as I mentioned before. The two groups met on separate days. One group of 10 were those principals who were still in their school, and the second group of 9 were those who had moved on. The questions were posed to both groups and were designed to get them to reflect on their practice as leaders. Now let me tell you, this was a very difficult task because, as you'll find and see in the findings when we get there, strong leaders like to give credit to a lot of people. But we were in the business of trying to find out what it looked like that enabled them to move these schools, who quite frankly were in need of change, into high-performing schools. We know that everyone in the school impacts what happens to students, but again, our goal was to focus on leadership practice. In many cases, successful school leaders are not really they're what we call unconsciously competent. They do things just because they do them without really reflecting on the practice of how it's so special in their environment. In order to capture all the rich dialogue, the comments were recorded by a professional, and also notes were taken by the writer for this final document. The report is enriched by many direct quotes that get to the heart of what these leaders do and feel about their profession. I must say, as a facilitator of the focus groups, every person responded in one way or another to every question. It was such a rich and exciting exchange of information, anecdotes, and ideas. These are definitely exceptional people. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Bill? Bill, can you hear me? We have a little glitch here. I'm not sure if our next presenter is able to hear me or not. Just wait 30 seconds and see if he's going to come in. Okay. Bill, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. What I want to share with you is a quote that comes from Stephen Covey. He talks about first build upon a strong core of principles. They're not open for continuous change. At the same time, be relentless in the quest for improvement and continuous self-renewal. And those three principles are part of the three pillars that are part of the Breaking Rank School. Collaborative leadership, professional learning communities, shared leadership, student and staff leadership development. Second pillar is personalization, attention to all students, mentoring and school community connections. And the third pillar is curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Access to rigorous coursework for all students, differentiated instruction with multiple assessments, data-based decision-making, and opportunities for career development. And within all, it develops a common language that an individual retains a rock-solid foundation and attains sustained growth for a lifetime in that improvement of the schools. Next slide, please. In this slide, you'll take a look at the heart of everything we do. Great teachers and principals help close the achievement gap. They improve attitudes about school, build habits of mind that can change the student's life trajectory. So again, we're talking about teachers working together with principals, developing that teamwork, developing a common language and mindset about working together, developing students not only academically, but social-emotionally, and changing their trajectory of the way that they're going in life. Next slide. And part of that is being a cook. Developing this teamwork, it goes through a number of different things. Number one is developing trust. And some of the work that trust comes from Peter Lencioni, and the work that he's done talks about developing trust with people and the importance of trust. And that trust has to be developed through developing a common language with people and developing them to be able to trust you. A couple activities that work with that is bring people together and talking about what's your favorite movie. As you sit down and talk to them, you get to get their input to see where they're coming from. Next, he talks about the importance of commitment. I like this quote too because commitment is what it's all about. Everybody has to be committed toward a common goal. And then effective communication. Communication is absolutely key so everybody understands what's going on with the expectations, what everybody's moving towards. And then collaboration. We're all coming together to listen to each other's ideas, develop a common resolution. And then we have conflict resolution sometimes. And in conflict resolution, we need to be able to listen to people's points of view. We need to hear what they have to be able to say, but at the same time, we have to work together as a team and develop those skills. The next is innovation and creativity, the importance of innovating, coming up with a greater solution among people and listening to their creativity. And this all works together to team spirit to develop outcomes and success. Next slide, please. And one of the key things that came out of the research was this quote: the communication tool to drive and support change. The antidote to pushback on change is communication. creating a strong mental model so people know where you're going, why it's happening, what's going to look like when you get there. That leads to a common goal. And a lot of the importance of that comes from the work by Cotter. He talks about 8 steps in order to be able to do transformational change. One of the things he talks about is creating a sense of urgency around the change, identifying the potential threats and scenarios, examining the opportunities, starting with honest discussions, giving dynamic and convincing reasons to get people talking and thinking. Then the second step is forming a powerful coalition or a team of influential people whose power comes from a variety of sources, getting them as carriers of the message, identifying leaders in the organization so you can get emotional commitment to people. The third step is creating a clear vision for the change, determine the values that are central to the change, develop a summary of 1 or 2 sentences that captures what you see as the future of the organization, create a strategy to execute that vision, ensure that you can change to describe the vision. Everyone should be able to describe that vision in 5 minutes or less. The next is communicating the vision. Talk often about your change vision. Address concerns honestly. Apply your vision to all aspects of operations, from professional development to performance reviews. Everything leads back to the vision. The step 5 is remove obstacles. Identify or hire change leaders whose main roles are to develop change. Look at the organizational structure, the job descriptions, performance systems. Ensure they're in line with the vision. Recognize and reward people for making changes happen. Identify people who are resisting change and help them understand what's needed, or take action to quickly remove barriers, human or otherwise. Step 6 is the political map. Looking at developing short-term wins. Look for surefire projects you can implement without help from strong critics of change. Don't choose early charts that are expensive. You want to be able to justify the investment in each project. Thoroughly analyze the potential pros and cons of the targets. If you don't succeed with an early goal, it may hurt your entire feeling to believe in it. Step 7 is build on the change. Develop a culture of change. Analyze what went right, what went wrong, what needs improvement. Set goals to continually build on the momentum you achieved. Ensure an environment of continuous improvement. Keep ideas fresh by bringing in new change agents and leaders. And then step 8 is anchor the changes in the organizational culture. Talk about the progress every chance you get. Success stories about change. Process and repeat other stories that you hear. Include the change ideals and values. And when hiring and training new staff, publicly recognize the key members of your organization. Develop a strong coalition to make sure the rest of the staff remembers their contribution. These are the important things that will develop change. Next slide. It all comes down to leaders never stop learning. We're always in a constant state of learning different ideas, strategies that we can move an organization forward and move people forward. And that is the developing of the 3 areas of the breaking ranks. The collaborative leadership, the personalizing the school environment, the curriculum instruction and assessment. Next slide.
Thank you, Bill. That was Bill Truesdale. He's principal of Douglas Taylor Elementary, a K-8 school in Chicago Public Schools and Breakthrough School. Our next speaker is Sheila Harity, Superintendent from Massachusetts, National Principal of the Year, Principal of a Breakthrough School. Hi, Sheila. You take it away.
Thanks, John. So I'd like to encourage our participants that are on the webinar to really think outside the 98% of the population in our world. Because I really believe that 98% of us live in our comfort zone, that you just want to get by, you're looking to survive. It's a lot easier to be like everybody else so that you don't stick your head out for someone to actually chop it off. A lot of times people stay in their comfort zone just to play it safe. But really I know you became an educator and a school leader because you believe in change and you want to impact students' lives. And you need to be part of the 2% of the population, which I'm sure many of you are striving to be. And to become a breakthrough school, I believe that being part of the 2%, you have to embrace the unknown. You have to be excited about change and actually like change. Live with sometimes having that unknown, but the confidence that you know that it will come together and you will be successful. And then you have to go after your dreams. You know, when I was fortunate enough to take over Worcester Technical High School in Worcester, Massachusetts in 2006, it was the lowest high school in our city and one of the poorest performing vocational schools in our state of Massachusetts. And we were thrilled to be able to, with many of the strategies that Bill talked about and the breaking rank strategies, in 2012 we actually became a breaking ranks school. In 2013 we became a U.S. Blue Ribbon School, and by 2014 we had gotten the attention of the President of our United States, and President Obama selected one high school in the entire country to address the graduates, and he came to Worcester, Massachusetts and spoke to our students. And I think we're the poster child for if anybody can do it, if we can do it, anybody can. And it's really about school leadership creating that team and willing to be that 2% of the population that are willing to put yourself at risk to get outside of your comfort zone to make a difference in your student's life. Next slide, please. What I found during that transitional time was really important information, and Bill mentioned it too, that we need to be continuous learners. And I found that for the first time in my professional career, I was being invited to the table where educational decisions were made, where policies were being made at the state level, and I was actually asked to sit at the table to be part of those decisions. And I encourage you, as you become a breakthrough school and an active leader in your community, that when you're invited to speak to groups or be part of an organization, please welcome that opportunity and embrace it. I know that you're very busy. As an educator, we're already working an extensive amount of hours and really are taxed every single day. But a lot of times in our profession, people are making decisions for our field, and their experience in education really is that they went through the K-12 system. And we are the voice and should be the voice of our educational profession. So take the time to take a seat at the table. As you become a breakthrough school, we certainly did this. We were sharing our best practices. We were helping our brother and sister school in our city, as well as other vocational schools in Massachusetts and across the country. Again, if we can do it, anybody can, and we wanted to share our best practices. I also suggest and recommend that you actually get involved at the local, state, and national conferences with NASSP. I don't think there's a time that NASSP has called me where I've said no. I welcome that opportunity. I embrace it. I'm honored to be able to represent our profession and share what we've done, because a lot of times you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are schools out there, and if you take pieces from, say, Worcester Technical High School, and you take some things from Bill's school and other breakthrough schools and other colleagues, you really can put pieces together to make your school the best it possibly can. Last slide. Or second to last slide. So for me, you know, here I was at a position where our school was, as I mentioned, extremely successful. The president, that really was the icing on the cake. Incredible opportunity to meet the president and actually have him shake each of our students' graduates' hands as they received their diploma. But I found myself at a crossroads. You know, I was born and raised in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm a product of Worcester Public Schools, and have worked almost my entire career in Worcester Public Schools. I could have stayed at Worcester Technical High School and certainly had coasted for the rest of my career. But I also know that, you know, I was put on this earth to make change and be a change agent for students, all students. So I decided to step out of my comfort zone and be part of that 2% again in my life, and I accepted a position at Monty Tech as the superintendent, wanting to make a change in North Central Mass. And I welcomed the opportunity to actually now be the superintendent of a vocational school representing 2 cities and 16 towns with over 300-mile radius in North Central Massachusetts. And for me, it was great being able to step out of that comfort zone. I didn't know a student, a staff member, or actually had to use the GPS to actually get to the school. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I felt like I had the ideas and certainly the team to put it together, and I wanted us to be able to do it again. And I'm really happy to say that You know, change is good. I welcome it, and I encourage you to do it as well as you continue to work through your educational profession. And when I left Worcester Tech as well, I left it with knowing that it was a well-oiled machine and that they would continue to do well, and they are still thriving. The last slide I wanted to share with you is what President Obama said. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And that quote certainly drives what I do every day, and I believe that all of us as educators are called to the profession to make impact on students' lives and to make our world better.
Thank you, Sheila, and I'd like to go back to Kathy at this point to give us the research perspective again.
Okay, thank you, Bill and Sheila. That was excellent. I really enjoyed listening because I think it parallels a lot with what you're going to hear me say about the findings. And again, maybe push the envelope a little more, because we did have, between the teachers and the principals, almost total agreeability, if that's a word, but then there were a few gaps, so we'll talk about that. Every study you've probably read lately about leadership seems to speak to the importance of collaboration and communication, but few actually describe what it might look like in action. On the surveys and in the focus groups, the principals rank collaboration and communication very high. But the teachers questioned a little bit how the leaders actually practice these areas on a day-to-day basis. This is one of the gaps we found, and I'll address it a little later in the session, but wanted to give you a sample of everybody's not always on the same page. It was very clear on one thing, though. Both principals and teachers valued instruction, results, and focus on student learning. There was absolutely no question. But they placed a lot less emphasis on sensitivity and building self-confidence. I think this issue with sensitivity is important, since you will find it in many other studies. Maybe it's the way each of us defines sensitivity, but it appears when you are working in high-need schools, some of these behaviors are not as necessary as one might think. The purpose in these schools was crystal clear: instruction, results, and focus on student learning. Everyone was on the same page. There were no mixed messages. If there was sensitivity in building self-confidence, it was for the students and not the adults. This is not to say that the teachers and leaders were not caring. They were very caring. But I would say they were much more collegial about their practice with students than they were congenial with each other. Students first always is what I came away with. Persistence and tenacity. These people never came up. Even during the focus group discussions, they were talking about what to do next and taking ideas from each other. Interestingly, when asked how they learned to do what they do, they said from other mentors. They were really good at observing others and taking what they thought would work. I think universities need to take note here that the practice of a strong leader did not come from the classroom or textbook, but from what I call experiential leadership. Every principal had a story about someone who influenced their practice and what they learned from these experiences. I think the lesson here is, if we want more of these strong leaders, we need to pay more attention to internships and better on-the-job experiences before we turn over the keys. Humility, empathy, and trust were all important, but I have to say, if you did a word search of the notes, the word trust would come up over and over again. Teachers trusted these leaders to do the right things, and these leaders worked hard to build and keep that trust. They showed great humility. As mentioned earlier, it was sometimes difficult to get these leaders to take credit for any of the accomplishments in the breakthrough schools. They always wanted to shine the spotlight on someone else. Relationships, partnerships, building, and community outreach were tools of the trade for these leaders. They were all important, but relationships seemed to dominate more of the discussions. These strong leaders knew their teachers and staff personally. They actually seemed to circle back to trust on these issues. It wasn't favoritism or granting any special attention, but a truly genuine caring for each other. They also knew their community, and there are some great quotes and stories in the report about how they conducted community research and partnership building. I won't give it away because they're really fun to read, but that section to me is some of the most telling areas about what these strong leaders did. High expectations, shared leadership, and developing leadership skills in others were mentioned by every participant. One principal spoke with great pride about how many present school leaders in her system she had mentored. Others spoke of teacher leaders and team leaders in their schools. There are some great quotes in the report about mentoring and coaching others. Interestingly, high expectations was sort of assumed. Their responses seemed to be almost like, of course we all have high expectations of ourselves and the students and the parents and the community. Isn't that how it's supposed to be? I repeat, these were amazing people. But if I had to pick one area that impressed me the most about these leaders was their ability to articulate how they differentiated for students. These leaders had a firm grasp on the knowledge and skills needed to educate their populations. They were teachers as well as school leaders, and they really understood the art and craft of teaching. I can't imagine that anyone could lead a successful school unless they possessed these strengths. And yet we continue to suggest that somehow school leadership doesn't require someone who understands teaching and learning. I totally disagree with that. Next, please. There were some obvious gaps that showed up, and one of them really was kind of perplexing to me until I recently attended the Learning Forward conference in Vancouver. And Michael Fullen and Andy Hargrave spoke on collaboration. And it sort of hit me that they were talking about professional learning, but their comments apply here. For some reason, I think we believe collaboration is always good, when in some cases, it can help to maintain the status quo and keep us in a rut. They were very powerful in their presentation about good and bad collaboration. This is so important. Some of us also confuse collaboration with consensus. I had a mentor at the University of Georgia, Carl Glickman. Some of you may know him by his writings. But Dr. Glickman always said, if everyone thinks alike, no one thinks much. So I think in some cases we are confusing collaboration with consensus when in fact it isn't. There's some food for thought. And the principals were very strong on it and very high on it, but because the teachers weren't, we really wanted to dig deeper to find out these differences in perceptions. The second gap, respondents had significant concerns about the ability to sustain instructional improvement after a transformational leader leaves a school. This is an ongoing problem in our business. We have got to help superintendents and other hiring sources within school districts to understand that there needs to be a very strong succession plan, especially in schools that are attaining or achieving at high levels like these schools. I worked for a gentleman who said a good school is only 1 weak principal away from becoming a bad school. And I believe that. We have to learn to build on what we have and not tear it down and make it something different. I cannot say enough about what we saw with those schools that had different leaders than when they received the breakthrough status. So those were some of the gaps that I think showed up in the findings. Some of them are probably the things that you would read in normal studies and not surprising, but others I think speak to the need of a school that's really trying to turn around with a sense of urgency. And I think Bill brought this out, that when there's a sense of urgency, some of the maybe traditional expectations that we have to be set aside for the benefit of students and their achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to open up all the microphones now for our Q&A period. There are a number of questions that have come in, And before I ask the first question, however, I say to the audience that here are the email addresses of the panelists today. So if you want to contact someone directly to get a response, you have that opportunity. If I may, I'll begin with this question because Kathy ended on this note. Sheila, I'll target you first and ask, do you have any regrets about leaving Worcester Tech? And if so, what are they?
I actually don't. I obviously love the school, love the people, the students. What makes me happy the most is that the school is still thriving, and our students are learning and doing great things. So it makes me feel great. And I don't feel, I haven't looked back. I mean, obviously I have incredible fond memories, and I love the city, and I still live in our city of Worcester. But it was really important for me to continue to grow as a professional. Originally, I didn't think I ever wanted to be a superintendent. And as I got further in my career, I realized that was a very natural next step. And although it's a big step, I really have enjoyed learning and the continuous learning that goes on with this job. And it gives you a different perspective of education. You know, one colleague had said to me a long time ago when I was getting asked to go to central office, and I didn't want to go. And he had said to me, Sheila, right now you're having an impact in classes with 20 or 25 students per class. He said, but when you work at central office or as a principal and a superintendent, you can have impact on thousands of students. And I really think about that advice he gave me because it really made great sense. Again, if you continue to make decisions what's best for students, your impact and your fingerprint can be all over a school district, and your influence can be great because you know the things as a principal and as an assistant principal and as a teacher that you didn't have. And as a superintendent, you want to make sure that you can ensure that people have the tools to be successful. So no, I think it's a great question. I haven't looked back. I can only look to the present and the future.
Thank you, Sheila. Kathy, this next question probably should go to you, but invite the other panelists to weigh in on it also if they have a point of view. What should be the next steps of a school district to help their building administrators to be strong leaders?
Oh, wow. I think that, well, first of all, I have to push succession planning. I just think it's so important to have a good bench, a pool of people who are ready to take on the challenges of leading schools, especially struggling schools. And sometimes that's sort of lost in the dust, and we're not paying attention to really building that bench of people who can step in as needed. So that would probably be my first issue. The second is that you really make strong partnerships with your universities that provide most of your leadership, because most of us are pretty local type entities, and work through preparing these next leaders or even sitting leaders. Because one thing that I did mention about the findings was that the teachers did not believe that the principals were taking advantage of their own learning opportunities. It may not have been obvious to them, but sometimes in the shuffle we forget about the professional learning of our sitting principals as well as the pre-service opportunities with our future principals. That it's extremely important that they be given the attention. The new ESSA, I think, has given kudos to that, provided some possible funding, and hopefully we will take advantage of doing that. This other issue, and I run into this in a lot of systems where there are superintendents who feel like they have to do fruit basket turnover every few years of principals and move them around. That's really a military model, and it actually doesn't work in education. There are times when people are ready to move and need another challenge, as Sheila just explained, and that's good. There are other times when it's not a necessary entity. So if that's a practice that you're accustomed to, please stop it because it really does not add to student success or give anyone the opportunity to build that strong coalition of a school that we're talking about here as a model next to the breakthrough schools. So, I mean, there are probably other things we could go into, but if you're at a starting point I think building the cadre of principals you already have with strong learning experiences and professional learning, like Hattie's visible learning or things of that nature that really help them expand their array of opportunities. We'll work with your universities to make sure your next bench is full of good people when you need them. And by all means, have a succession plan so you know who needs to go into those slots and can carry on when good principals move to other areas.
Thank you. This next question is also for the entire panel, so whoever would like to weigh in on it, please do. You talked about institutional change and the components for teachers and administration to gain support for change. Any recommendations on thoughts on helping parents embrace the change and the new direction of a school as a new administrator?
Bill?
Yeah, John, I'll take a stab at that. I think one of the important things, again, is looking at Cotter's 8-step model and walking the parents through the same 8 steps as part of that. And at the same time, too, letting them know the importance of being involved in the school improvement plan. With those benchmarks and those milestones, the parents are definitely involved in that whole process, too. You know, the importance of sharing that information with the community, whether it goes through a local school board meeting or it's inviting the parents to come in and take a look at what's going on in the school. But I really like John Cotter's model. It's a very good model to developing change.
Bill, can you reference any publication of Cotter's or give some direction to the person asking this question about where to find more about his model?
Sure. Cotter's 8-step model is information you can find. He has a couple different books out. It's called The 8 Steps to Successful Change by John Cotter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And while I have you, Bill, let me ask you the question, what would it take to get you to leave your school, and do you see yourself moving on to other things at any time?
Well, that's a difficult question, Don, because I love my kids. I love my kids. I love my school. I love my community. At the same time, though, I also think that my mission is to be able to work and have more influence. As Sheila talked about, too, when you're in the principalship, and I've been in the principalship now for almost 12 years here at Taylor School, you kind of look at things in perspective and say, who else can I help? What other school district can I help with some of the ideas that I've been able to learn, especially with the breaking ranks? One of the things I've always talked about, and I've taught classes at universities, working with new principals and doing internships and being on principal governing boards too, is always sharing the breaking ranks, because that model is so strong and powerful with so many things that can help propel a school forward.
Thank you. Kathy, I think this question is best posed to you. What does the research show about mediocre teachers rising to the ranks to be mediocre administrators, and thus leaving a community with generations of students who are undereducated and not prepared for the demands of life after high school?
Oh boy, you just hit a chord on that one. I've spent almost a decade as a higher ed administrator and an ed leadership professor. And I always requested the first class that the students took in their master's program. And it was alarming to me how many of the students would respond to questions of, why are you getting into this business? Like, I want to get out of the classroom, or I just, it was alarming, because it was obviously not that fire in the belly to make a change for students. It wasn't that drive to be able to do something that would impact the needs of a struggling school, which is what I was looking for. So I think, and again, having been part of the university, I'm going to call upon the university again to be more careful about how they screen and select people to become part of that program that's going to give us our next generation of school leaders. And I'm going to call upon human resource people to be much more careful about how they interview people for the position of principalships. That the kinds of questions that you ask and the screening and scrutiny that you give to people gives you a real window into their reasoning for winning this kind of position. And I think if we are all more attentive to how we prepare, how we recruit, and how we select, that we can make a big difference. because quite frankly, there are, unfortunately, mediocre teachers who wanted to leave the classroom. It's not hard to get a master's in ed leadership. I wish it were. I've fought for 20 years trying to make that happen, and I think what NASSP and CCSSO is doing now will change some of that. I'm really impressed with the CAPE study and what's going on, but the fact of the matter is that we are going to have to be more attentive in our selection, recruiting, and hiring practices in order for this not to happen. And there's all kind of literature out there that talks about the kinds of questions you can ask people that really give you a good insight as to why they are attempting to make this change in their life.
Thank you. I'll take the next question because I think the answer is just a pretty cut and dried. And person asks, how can I share this webinar's content and handouts to up-and-coming young administrators I know? And the answer to that is this is a free resource on the website once it's posted. You don't have to be an NASSP member to get into it. And Joe, if I'm speaking incorrectly here, please correct me. Anybody can get to this resource, the study itself as well as the webinar. I know that I personally work as a coach in the Maryland Promising Principals Academy, and I plan to have all the assistant principals who are my mentees in that project bring this to their attention and ask them to do some reading of the materials in the next, as we go into second semester. So I encourage you to go to the NASSP website and see the free resources that are there and share them with others. And I'm just one eye.
The study that we've discussed so far is available. It is on the website. So if you go to NASSP.org and simply type in Breakthrough Schools, you'll have ready access to this report.
And I was going to go back to your slide that shows that address. I think it's this one. Yeah, here.
There it is. Yes.
So go to that link and you can get access to that report and share it widely. It's exciting information, and I think NASSP would love to have more folks involved. I'm keeping one eye on the time, and we're at 4:21, so we have time for one or two more questions. And I just want to scan through here. There are a number of questions I haven't gotten a chance to read yet because they are quite long, and I just want to make sure that I'm covering all the bases here.
Don, while you're looking at that, may I make a comment about the question that Bill answered on how to get parents involved?
Yes, please.
I'm a grandmother, and I follow very closely my two grandchildren in the school that they're in. And I've been studying these schools now for 20 years. And I find that principals who are visible, visible to parents, visible and open and willing to listen. I realize Cotter has great steps for change, but those principals that I think are going to have parents on their side when they need them are those, again, my grandchildren's school, the principal is out when the kids get out of their cars in the morning. He's out when they get in the cars in the evening. He just is so visible that you know and you feel like you can go and talk to him about anything. That sounds simplistic, but I cannot tell you how many times principals don't do that. Mm-hmm. They make themselves hermits in an office or something instead of really reaching out to the populace that they serve. So I just wanted to throw it out because it's a simple change that makes, to me, a tremendous difference in how the community and the parents perceive the principal.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's another question, Kathy, that's for you. Are the focus group findings that Kathy was referencing in any way suggesting that the characteristics of strong leaders can't be taught? Is it suggesting that some have got it and others don't? What are the implications of the answer?
Okay, that's the old nature versus nurture question we've been wrestling with. I don't think that the skills, practices, and behaviors cannot be taught. I really think they can. I think there is a disposition, though, that goes along with the kind of person who may pick this as his or her profession. And I'm not sure that disposition can be taught. That's where you get to sort of the rubber meets the road, is that I can teach you to do all the things in the findings, But the way you come to the table and the openness and the disposition that you bring to the practice makes a big difference in the way people see you. So I guess my answer to that question is yes, you can teach everybody all of the things we're talking about, and they would probably be better leaders because not everybody is taught what we are reporting here. As we found from the findings, most of these people learned what they learned from watching others and picked up the skills that they thought was best to serve them in their future careers. So it was more experiences than anything else. But I will have to say that I do believe there is a kind of disposition that comes with and wanting to serve and a need to see children succeed, and a work ethic that says, I'm going to do it. I mean, these people they were persistent to the end. They knew their kids could do it, and they were going to keep at it until they made sure that their children did succeed.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that each of the presenters now take a moment and reflect if there's any last words you'd like to say. We are at 4:24, and there is one more question I'll pose that came from the audience, but while I'm posing that question, think about if you have any last words you'd like to share with the group. Regarding the notion that strong leaders attract strong teachers, please define these two actors in the education dynamic and elaborate. And I'll go first to the two practitioners on the panel, Bill and Sheila. You both are strong leaders. You've proven that. You've been recognized for it. What's your response to that question?
I think one of the key things, John, is you have to recognize people and the great work that they do. I think a lot of times you have to be able to talk to teachers one-on-one and say to them, you know, you're doing a great job with this, and give them specific, clear feedback, because they need that pat on the back. They also need to be recognized when they're doing great things. Like, for example, we have an award called the Eastside Chamber of Commerce Teacher Leader of the Year, and that's one of the awards that I'm able to recommend their teachers for. And it's based on a number of things, not only academic performance, but it's also based on how well they're contributing to the school. So those are kind of the awards I think that are very important. And even Golden Apple Awards too. I've nominated some of my teachers for Golden Apples. It's really developing that key relationship with those teachers so they're on board with you.
Thank you.
So, you know, to develop people within the school and to attract people to the school, I think, like Bill had said, certainly we had created a Teacher of the Year, not only for our school, we created a Hall of Fame as well, and displayed it on our Main Street. That's part of our school, that where we have a full-service bank and a restaurant, so that the public could see it as well. But in addition, you know, we treated our teachers like professionals, and many times our professional development was our own teachers teaching each other and showing each other their best practices. I know for one of the things that we were working on at Worcester Technical High School was really how to implement an open response and how to teach about long composition and so forth. And some people had stronger attributes at it than others. And we actually freed up time and brought additional classes to the auditorium so that the teacher that was the exemplary teacher actually was able to teach the total group of students, while the other teachers actually sat and took notes. Sometimes we even had the teacher freed up and brought them into individual classes as well. So it really created a level of respect of a mentor teacher within the building, and then more and more people understood that respect and became part of the team, and then the team just got larger and larger and larger because we were sharing best practices. It also helped bring down some of those walls. A lot of times teachers want to teach and just close the door and not share their curriculum or not share their best practices. And when you create this culture of sharing and nurturing and supporting each other and coordinating your own professional development, it really breaks down those walls and gives the ability for teachers to start collaborating and working together and being recognized for the experts that they are.
Thank you very much. Any last words from any of the panelists?
You know, it still bothers me that one question, not that it was a bad question, but it's a real question. I'm not sure who had asked it, but they said, you know, what do we do about mediocre teachers that then become mediocre administrators? You know, something to that point. And I say, step up. Way too often, you know, we're allowing people to lead us that aren't leaders. And the leaders in the building, and you know who they are, might be hesitant because sometimes our society becomes way too critical. Way too often people pick up their iPhones and their Facebooks and start criticizing way too quickly instead of supporting one another. And when you develop a school where you can trust one another and create that culture of trust, which is, I've heard Kathy say time and time again, that was in a breakthrough school, then true leaders, those natural leaders, the people that should be leading the school, will step up into those roles. But it's because it is a culture that is supportive and nurturing. If it's toxic, then a lot of times the people that should be leading won't, just because they don't want to put themselves through that. And it's one of those things that if we can continue to promote and support good leaders and then work together, we can take any school and bring it to the next level.
Thank you. I'd like to close today's session by inviting all of you to join in the first ever National Principals Conference. And when I say first ever, I mean that this is the first time that NASSP and NAESP, the Elementary Principals Association, have come together to offer a joint conference. It's in Philadelphia next summer, July 9th through 11th. The information about registration and presenting and everything you need to know about the conference is at principalsconference.org. And just encourage you to attend. And if you can't attend, I'll ask you to please pass this information on to others in your districts. Thank you for being with us today, and this concludes our webinar.